I'm Dr. Beth Brooks, and I'm the clinical advisor here at Vivian Health. And today I'd like to talk with you about realistic job previews. Each month, I do a 15 to 20-minute video talking about evidence-based recruitment and retention strategies, and I have a whole series of videos called On the Horizon in Healthcare. So today we're going to talk about realistic job previews, a strategy that's been around since the 1970s, an approach to how and what kind of information and when you share information with a job candidate about working in your organization. And there's been a lot of research over the years about what and how to do a realistic job preview. So the idea of a realistic job preview is to present both the good and the bad about your organization. And I shouldn't say bad, but be honest about what it's like to work in your organization. Of course, you want to sell your organization, but you also need to share with the candidates some things that perhaps are less favorable about working in the organization. And the reason you do that is so that the applicant can't later say, oh, they didn't tell me it would be like this, or no one told me this during my interview. So to the extent possible, you want to prevent some of those misperceptions about what the job has been advertised as and what the job and the work is really about. And so over this time, since the 70s, one thing that the researchers have looked at is what's the best method to present a realistic job preview and when is the best time to do that. And, no surprise that some time ago, in the old days, we really only had non-digital ways of doing a realistic preview. You might call on the phone, you might meet a company representative at a recruitment fair, you might be handed a brochure, you might have a face-to-face interview, but really there was just a few ways that you had time as the organization to sit in front of that candidate and tell them what the job is really like. Now, over time, we have all these new digital strategies, right? We've got video interviews, we have social media, but the same holds true. Whether you're using a non-digital or a digital approach, you still want to share both the favorable and less favorable information about your organization. In the old days, we found out that many hospitals, many big healthcare employers would have a short video on their webpage in their employment or the human resources section, in the career section. And it would be a short video showing an employee what a day in the life was about. And at the time, we knew that doing a video was much more effective than a brochure or a job posting. So that makes sense. And as time has gone on, we've also learned that when is the best time to do the realistic job preview? You certainly, and depending on when you choose, may impact that recruitment process. If you do a realistic preview too early, you may weed out candidates that potentially could work in your organization, or you've weeded out candidates that won't be a good fit for your organization. So there's a benefit of doing it early in the process. But then you might decide, let's do a realistic job preview sort of in the middle of the hiring process. Before we make that job offer, let's tell this candidate, here's exactly what this role is about. And here are some of the things we want to tell you about what the role might be like. And then there are some folks that have said, oh, you should do the realistic job preview after the offer. And to me, that's probably too late. And actually, some of the evidence does describe that it is too late. So depending on whether you want to do a realistic job preview early in the process, and that's typically when candidates are just wanting to learn about your organization, or do you want to do the realistic job preview once someone has applied so that they are more informed? And then sometimes candidates are going to self-select out of the process. And again, that may not necessarily be a bad thing, because one of the benefits of a realistic job preview is what's called person organization fit or person job fit. If you've provided this realistic job preview, that candidate can make some decisions about, I think I would fit in this organization, or I think I would fit in this job. So providing that information in a truthful way will benefit your entire recruitment process. I'm most familiar with hospitals having some video vignettes on their career site that kind of has employees talk about what it's like to work in the organization. So it's an outcome-based strategy. It is something that we probably don't do enough of. It's a strategy that will benefit your organization when you're both honest and truthful about the work, and you are also giving the employee information about what's great about your organization. And one of the things that's in the research that I think is really important, if you're trying to build a culture where you're forthright and you're honest and you're trying to build trust within your organization, having been honest with a candidate during the interviewing process with a realistic job preview, that will go a long way for the perceptions and this culture of honesty that you want to build in your organization, and this culture of trust. It also, generally speaking, engenders more organizational commitment. You'll have less turnover, and typically there's more job satisfaction, and employees will tend to perform better. So there are all these really smart reasons to do a realistic job preview and have those available to your to your candidates. So just think about, do we want to have some video on our website, some kind of video vignette? That would, of course, have to be mobile enabled, and it's got to be able to be accessible. The message has to be clear about what's good about a role and all the challenges of the role. And it's probably in your best interest to do that realistic job preview before you've given the job offer. So again, this is realistic job previews have been around for a long time. It's a strategy that maybe in the hustle and bustle of a busy HR department, it's just something that you just haven't thought to do. It's particularly helpful if you have recruiters that don't necessarily have a clinical background in the positions that they're recruiting for. It really helps for candidates to hear another clinician speak about the work and the role in the organization. And it's worth considering because there should be, hopefully, some returns on that back end that make that investment of developing the videos well worth your time. So I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I hope you've thought about or are thinking about re-implementing a realistic job preview in your recruitment process. I think the benefits are to be had and certainly will help smooth through that process. And so thank you for joining me today. And if you have any questions or comments or would like to see the research, please let us know. And you can find us at hire.vivian.com. And thank you.